Donald Trump wants the most powerful and legendary institution in higher education in this country, arguably in the world, to bend the knee to his whims and become a kind of controlled asset of MAGA. That is the goal here. But this attack on the university isn't really about Harvard at all, qua Harvard, and it isn't happening in a vacuum. It is the latest escalation in the administration's ongoing day-by-day battle, and this is going to sound hyperbolic, but I really believe it, to destroy all independent sources of knowledge and fact-finding in our free and open society. As the writer Adam Serwer put it in his latest piece to The Atlantic, by destroying knowledge, Trumpists seek to make the country more amenable to their political domination and to prevent meaningful democratic checks on their behavior. Their victory, though, would do much more than that. It would annihilate some of the most effective systems for aggregating, accumulating, and applying human knowledge that have ever existed. Without those systems, America could find itself plunged into a new dark age.
The new dark ages. Yippee! Where the Trump regime reverses all higher learning, science, human, and civil rights, except, of course, for white Christian nationalist men. Hi, my name is Suri Crowe, and you're watching the MeidasTouch Network. Well, the good news is that Harvard is winning so far. A federal district judge extended her order blocking the Trump regime from revoking Harvard's ability to enroll foreign students until it can be replaced with a preliminary injunction. And side note here, hidden away in the big, ugly ass bill that Republicans are trying to sneak and swindle through Congress right now is wording that would prohibit judges from being able to make these exact kind of orders against Trump, which is another reason why we must fight this bill from passing at all costs. But getting back to this story, in his war against Harvard's refusal to bend to his white supremacist orders, Donald Trump has blocked $3 billion of federal funding to Harvard, threatening to redirect it to trade schools. Trump is accusing Harvard of only hiring Democrats, which is patently false. I am personally aware of many Harvard professors who are Republican or conservative. He says radical left idiots and bird brains, I can hardly read this with a straight face, are there, which is indicative of how stupid he is, because Congress has already appropriated these funds to Harvard specifically for use through the National Institute of Health to fund biomed research. This after a lengthy application process by individual scientists at Harvard. Now, that is not going to happen at trade schools. Electricians and plumbers and so forth are not going to crack the human genome or figure out how to cure glioblastoma or how to cure ALS. No offense to trade schools or plumbers and electricians, but that's just not their wheelhouse. Here is Harvard Law Professor Emeritus Lawrence Tribe.
Professor Tribe, what is your response to Donald Trump's latest attack?
Well, it's really hard, Lawrence, to know where to begin. He's obviously unhinged. He has no idea what he's talking about. He just thinks that slinging around, frankly, BS about the people at Harvard and other institutions will somehow substitute for taking the law into account. He has been throwing everything he can at Harvard, and courts have put a stop to it. There was no judge shopping. There's a program called the Student Exchange Visitor Program. For 70 years, Harvard has been admitting the most brilliant students and scholars from around the world. They are welcomed not only by Harvard, but by the United States, because what they learn, what they discover, benefits the country and benefits the health and welfare of all Americans. Many of the people who came to this country, like Albert Einstein, made this a mecca of discovery and learning. But obviously, this is a president who hates intellect, who despises the symbol of excellence in the world of higher education around the world. He thinks he can score points by attacking Harvard. But I have a message And it's a message that I wouldn't bother delivering to him. I don't know that he'd understand it. But a message to those 7 students, those 7,000 students that he's trying to frighten away. Don't be scared. This guy is a paper tiger. He's a tin horn tyrant. In the month of May, there were all kinds of cases across the country, judges appointed by Republicans and Democrats involving Donald Trump and his megalomaniac attacks on all of our institutions. And you know what his record was? He lost over 95% of them.
I love it that Harvard is fighting back. Go Crimson. And you should too. And here's the thing. Harvard isn't just fighting back for Harvard, but for all of us, for other institutions of higher education, for free speech, for breakthroughs in medical research and social sciences and political science and on, as well as critical thinking, something that dictators and fascists like Donald Trump abhor.
The stakes are tremendous, not just for Harvard, but I should emphasize more largely for American democracy. And I think that's the way we should be talking about this. People often act like this is a fight between Harvard and Trump, but it's not. This is an example of a president acting as an authoritarian and essentially trying to take control of a private institution in the United States because he doesn't like their political speech. And if that's allowed to go forward, then that'd be a tremendous break with the American tradition of democracy and how it relates to higher education.
But not everyone is rooting for Harvard besides Trump and MAGA world. To my absolute horror, I read the stupidest take in the New York Times this week. The title, Why Harvard Has No Way Out, co-written or written by Michael Schmidt, who is one of the New York Times chief investigative reporters who has been covering the Harvard-Trump battle almost exclusively. Here were his thoughts on Harvard's chances of prevailing. Now, he's sort of being interviewed by another New York Times reporter by the name of Jess Bidgood here. And essentially, Michael Schmidt's take is that the government is the one with the upper hand here. So Ms. Bidgood asks Michael Schmidt, I'd imagine that for international students, this makes the prospect of attending Harvard feel deeply uncertain, even unappealing. Where would the university find itself, even if it wins? Here's Michael Schmidt. Even if Harvard runs the table in court, it's still persona non grata with the Trump administration. And that means it's going to continue to face investigations, including from the Justice Department and the Department of Homeland Security. To which I say, Michael Schmidt, and so, and no shit. He goes on to say, the federal government has more levers to use against an institution like Harvard than certainly I had appreciated. If you are persona non grata with Trump, he's got you by the lapels in a way that is extraordinary, and Harvard is feeling it. What we saw yesterday is just the latest pressure point. And then she asks him, what's happening at Harvard behind the scenes? So Michael Schmidt answers, Harvard officials have privately determined that they are in a major crisis with very few, if any, good off-ramps. Seriously, Michael Schmidt, could you be any more of a, Trump apologist? And he also, in the same article, called the Trump administration creative and audacious in the way that they were fighting back against Harvard. Well, you know what, Mr. Schmidt, here is one of those Harvard insiders. Again, Professor Tribe, who has taught law at Harvard for, 50 years.
There is no law that justifies what they're trying to do. And their attempt to retaliate against Harvard for not turning over all kinds of information to which they have no right in violation of the privacy of these students, retaliating against Harvard for having a curriculum that this president doesn't like, not that he understands it. That retaliation is flagrantly and flatly unconstitutional. He basically wants to know what these students are going to read. He would love to know what they're going to say, what they're going to think. He wants to be confident that they won't join any protests against Israel's war in Gaza. It's all an attempt to take over the intellectual underpinnings of a private university. And anybody who isn't connected to Harvard shouldn't feel, confident that they won't be next. The one thing we have going for us is the law. It's harder for lots of foreign students who face these threats and wonder, am I safe? But the siren of safety in succumbing to lawless power is really illusory. If you give up in advance, that's when you're not safe. But trust me, Harvard has your back because you are crucial to us and to our survival. And America's judges have your back because you're prevailing over Trump in this lawless war he is waging on the mind is vital to our courts and their survival as keepers of the flame of the rule of law. So yes, you've got an enemy in this deranged Donald Trump, but you've got millions of friends.
Oh, wow. As Professor points out, what they have going for them is the law. That's right, the rule of law. We are still fighting for the rule of law in America. And it's such an important point for all of us. Harvard is leading the way in this fight. The worst move to make is to lie down and quit. The worst move, remember? Never obey in advance. And Trump is losing constantly. And this key rule, you never negotiate with a terrorist. Never. And Trump is a terrorist.
And in Donald Trump's war against the greatest university in the world, Donald Trump is going to lose. The history of Donald Trump's war against Harvard will not be written during Donald Trump's presidency. And in Harvard's history, Donald Trump's war is a speck. Donald Trump's last year in the presidency will be Harvard's 393rd year. Donald Trump's presidency will be the equivalent of roughly 1% of the years Harvard University has already been with us as America's oldest university, founded in 1636. Long before anyone ever dreamed of a country called the United States of America, long after Donald Trump is gone, the world-class historians at Harvard University and elsewhere will be defining Donald Trump's presidency as the most corrupt American presidency in history. The Trump presidency will be recorded in history as a failure because nothing Donald Trump does in the presidency will live after him. The policies are all reversible and will be reversed, and many of them will be reversed in the courts during the Trump presidency.
If you are ever feeling down or defeated about the onslaught of Trumpian attacks, take a dose of Lawrence O'Donnell, another Harvard alum. His nightly perspective and biting commentary on Donald Trump and his fascist minions is brilliant and often quite hilarious. I was laughing my ass off at this particular takedown because in the end, Donald Trump is nothing more than a tin pot dictator. Not to say that he obviously isn't a huge threat to America and the rest of the world, but he's a giant whinging, whining pest. He is dumber than dumb. He can't even read. He has no idea how government works at all. He's just blindly ignorant. And as Professor Tribe says, he hates intellect. He hates higher learning. And look, whether or not you've had the chance to go to a school like Harvard or even college, you should be rooting for them. Harvard shares its wealth of information and its graduates with the rest of the world. And that is a blessing for us and a blessing of higher education, period. That makes us a better and more informed society, which is why fascists hate higher education, which is why they are trying to control and take over education everywhere so that they can brainwash and keep the masses ignorant. You know, Columbia folded and Trump is still extorting that university, as he is every single law firm who folded and made a deal with them. You never make a deal with the devil. You will never win. It never works out for you, ever. And I am shocked that people are still questioning this, like Michael Schmidt of the New York Times. What a stupid take. I hope he sees my take and hears me on this, because that's absurd. And I predict that Harvard will prevail, They've been around, as you heard, for nearly 400 years. They are going to outlive and win long after Donald Trump is an ugly asterisk in American history. So, yeah, that's my take. Do not lie down. Do not obey in advance, and take a page from Harvard's book. Stand up and fight. Understandably, we may not have a $53 billion endowment or the best lawyers in the nation, but we can stand up and root and fight. And collectively, if we do this together, we will fight off this fascist authoritarian regime. I feel it more strongly in my bones now more than ever, as we are 4.5 months in, because Trump is making a colossal disaster out of his second term. It's a disaster. Things are falling apart everywhere and all at once. All right. I think I'll stop talking now. Thanks for watching. I will see you back here soon. Don't forget to follow along on all my socials, and I'll see you on Substack. And as always, peace.
Love this video? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch and help us blow past 1 million followers.